Hey, what's going on, everyone? Before we get into our conversation, I want to let you know this podcast is sponsored by BetRivers.com. BetRivers.com, the best place for all your sports gambling needs. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. You can also watch all of these episodes on the Field of 68 YouTube channel. Now, let's get into our conversation. What's going on, everyone? This is Eric Devendorf, and I'm your host of the Scores Table. And today we got on another great guest, another SU all-time great. He's an all-time great human being, all right? Just let me tell you that. He was born in St. Louis, Senegal. He went to Oak Hill. We both went to Oak Hill alum. One of the best anchors in the 2-3 zone of all time, one of the best communicators, a guy who was active, brought energy, just a guy who could do stuff and change the game with his energy. He was an all-time great in that middle for me. And he's one of the all-time great people, just like I said before. My guy, Baye Moussa Keita. What's up, man? I know you've been busy doing a lot.
No, just like, it's like right now it's a little hard with COVID, but like trying to just everything shifts virtually. So I spend a lot of time on the computer. So this is like just trying to adapt since, we have I deal with a lot of international regions. That's mainly my job currently. So it's just like shifting everything virtually. It's kind of my job now. Is everything is virtual, not in person as much.
So let's start back home in Senegal, man. Like, cause you got a pretty awesome journey. Tell me about how, you got here and kind of how did you get introduced to the game back home?
So it was funny. Like the funniest thing happened. Didn't even start playing basketball until I was 13. Like it was crazy. So it was just like one of those days. Like the school I used to go to, we used to have like the basketball court, like the basketball court. We used to use it to play soccer. We never used to play basketball, and like the basket was like these two, like a piece of metal that comes up, and the backboard was attached to it. We used to use that as goal, like the goalie. Like that's what we used to play soccer. And then one of my best friend growing up, well, like his cousin was playing ball, and then he's like one day he saw me. He's like, "Man, I keep telling you to play basketball," and then they was having practice. When they come, they kick us out because they play, that's a basketball court, but we use it for soccer. And then he come in and he's like, "Man, you should just come to practice for 30 minutes. If you don't like it, you can stop. Like it's not like you're not attached or anything." So I literally, like, I remember doing micings, like, just the micings. And the next day I woke up, my whole shoulders were hurting. I'm like, man, this not might be for me. But I know what? I think that's when I caught the bug, like they say. It's just like that one moment. I went back the next day, same thing. And then from there, it was just like one thing after another happened. So like from there, like I was just like the youngest guy like on the team. I started making teams here and there. They put me in the games, just, start getting my experience. And Seeds Academy, which is like Amadou, Amadou, like the president of the BAL now, what was previously a scout for the Mavs, like had like the school. And then they came to visit like my hometown because my hometown was so far away, and then hardly like one or two students from there. They're like, "All right, we're gonna visit your hometown," and then they ran a camp. And then after the camp, they were like, "Man, you have a lot of talent. I don't know if you know it or not. We're gonna have a camp for like students to come try out, and then if we see the potential, we're gonna have you in this school for like, just for you to play basketball, go to school, and then see what the opportunity leads you." I'm like, man, this is too good to be true. I'm like, I'm not that good. Like, I'm like, I don't know, they hyping me up. And then I went to the tryouts, not expecting a lot, just doing me. I'm like, I'm just gonna go in, positive mind, do my thing. And then 2 days later, after the workouts, like, and the tryout was cool because it's a first morning is academy, like you do like the test with the school. At night was all basketball. You do that, you spend the weekend doing that. And then like on a Tuesday, they call me. They're like, "Oh, if you want to, you can, like, you think you have a lot of potential, you can come and be part of Seeds Academy." I'm like, "Is this?"
So how far is this away from your house, from where you are at?
This is 2.5 hours from my house. So like,
okay,
I'm like, yeah, I'm like, this is like, I'm like, you know what? I'm a little scared. Like, but this was like 2 years later, like from age 13 to 15. So I'm like, man, I'm a little scared. I'd like back home, nobody leave, like go somewhere for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Like everybody wants to be close bonded. It's the African thing. Everybody wants to be close, the net. And I'm like, man, my dad would look at me and he's like, you made, like, you made your own decision. Like you can make your decision. And then I realized like I'm one of 7. I'm like, I just would be like another mouse to feed, another like play, like another someone to like the school books and all these things gonna add up. And if I go there, everything will be free. I'm like, man, this is a no-brainer. So I decided to leave. It was hard, but I went there, you know, it was 20 of us, just like morning, 6 a.m. It was like, people were like how why do you have so much discipline? I'm like, it's from there. You woke up 5:45, 6 o'clock, you get to the soccer field, it's all dark, and you do conditioning for an hour. Like sprints, you're like, I'm telling you, it was so brutal. But from there, it was just like every summer we used to do the Basketball Without Borders with the NBA. And like everybody used to go to that. And from there, like, you know, the college, you get to interact with NBA players. So that was our first time getting the exposure to have like NBA players come to Senegal for the day. We like, the top of the top, like, you know, Doc River and all these people. Like you work with these NBA coaches you just see on TV, and the next day you got up on the plane with them to go to Basketball Without Borders. My first year, I was not good, Eric. Like I was probably like out of the like 12 we brought, I was like probably the 15th man. And then like they like someone didn't have a passport. They're like, all right, come in. And that was my first time flying. I did 8 hours from Senegal to South Africa. Got there at 12 o'clock. At 2 o'clock, they're like, all right, you're hopping on the camp. I'm like, man. And it was just like one of those experiences. I to this day, I will Dikembe now, like I work for the NBA. Dikembe always making fun of me. I'm like, do you remember my first Basketball Without Borders? I got there, I was jet lagged, and you yelled at me for the first time. Like I didn't know. Like I'm like, I was so nervous because the nerves haven't got in. People were there for 3 days. They got the, you know, they've been somewhere for 3 days. You kind of got your ways. Me, new guy come in, they add me to the team, and it was just like from there, is the rest is history. Like I did that camp for 3 years. My last year, I was just sitting there having lunch. They call me. They're like, you know, prep school in wants you. And I'm like, what prep school? They're like, Oak Hill. I'm like, man, this is too big to go through. But funny enough, my second year out of the 100, I was the top 2. So I'm like, I didn't think I was the top 2, but I was an all-star team. Like, I was like one of the, I didn't want to say I'm one of the best player, but I was like definitely like the top 5 of the whole camp out of the 100. So they're like, are you going to the Jordan Band Classic? So I came to New York like that, age 16. So I'm like, man, that's too good to be true. I played my first game at the Garden, and you know how that was crazy. Coach Smith came in because they used to have an international game for the Jordan Band Classic. I don't know if they canceled it or not. And for the international side, I was an MVP for my team. And then, you know, my third year I was at the camp. They're like, oh, do you want to go to the US to be at this prep school? So I literally called my parents. I'm like, all right, I'm going to the US, like from a phone call. So I left South Africa to go straight to the US. And from there, it was just, you know, 2 years at Oak Hill and then end up to Syracuse.
So look, hold on, man. We're going to rewind a little bit because so 13 to 15, you went to Seed Academy.
No, 13 to 15, I was just playing ball. Like I was practicing 2 times a day in my hometown. And from 15 to like 17 and 18, that's when I went to 16, 17. Yeah, that's when I went to like, you know, BWB and all that. And I got to Oak Hill when I like turned 18, like 17, that's when I got to Oak Hill at 17.
Let me tell you guys a little bit about our partners over at Bet Rivers Sportsbook. If you haven't signed up with Bet Rivers yet, now's the time, because they are offering a $250 match bonus for your first deposit. But what sets them apart is that they require just one playthrough to turn your bonus into cash money. With their new Rush Pay Instant Approval, withdrawing your winnings is safer, more secure, and more reliable. With basketball season right around the corner, there's never been a better time to get in on the action by going to betrivers.com today or downloading the Bet Rivers iOS app. Must be 21 years or older. Gambling problem? Call telephone number 1-800-GAMBLER. So the Seed Academy was 2.5 hours away, right? Or what was
2.5 hours from my parents.
Okay, and then the Basketball with Borders was a whole other thing.
Yeah, like it was like, so they used to select us out of the 20. They used to select 3 or 4. to go to South Africa, which is like
out of the okay.
yeah. So like we like used to combine our team. So like they don't want to like it used to be 100 players. So you just like Senegal used to have 10, like Nigeria have 10, Angola have 10, and then like the less dominant country, like for example, like Egypt and all these countries that didn't have good play like a basketball background, used to have like 2 or 3 players, and we used to all go to one big camp for a week. So it was like, man, this is like 8-hour flight. Like everybody was excited. You get the new sneakers, and then you're like, man, you're getting coached by NBA coaches. It was a dream for me. I was like, and when I went to that camp, I didn't expect a lot. Like you said, like I just go to the camp. I'm like, look, I'm just coming here, work out, and then just see what happens.
Oh man, so going back, just kind of listening to what you said, it all kind of started from you like just looking at it as I'm helping my family out because now I'm helping with the money issue, right? Or the money thing.
Yeah, it's like I said, growing up, like it's not like I was going hungry or anything, but money was tight, right? It was like it's just like I'm a one of 7. Having 7 kids.
Yeah, you was looking out.
Yeah, you're gonna look. I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I'm not a burden anymore, right? Like I'm not like gonna be like bothering my parents anymore. I can go, books is paid for, like a housing is paid for, everything is paid for. The only thing I have to do is like be home in the summer, but like half of that summer I'm going to camps in like around the country. So it's like everything I'm doing is paid for. Like so, like I'm less of a like a I wouldn't say
taking a lot of pressure off of them, man.
Yeah, like it take a lot of pressure off them. Like it was just nice for them to know that like I was taken care of and they didn't have to worry about me.
So you go to all those camps, Basketball Without Borders. That's where Oak Hill see you. So you go to New York City, Coach Smith see you. You get to Oak Hill, okay? Now we all know Oak Hill, mouth of Wilson, Virginia, in the middle of nowhere. You walking outside in class, it's cows and all that going on. So what happened when you get there? What was your first?
Like it was a call, like for example, like I said, the previous year I was in New York City, right? I was at the Garden, like I had like the New York experience. Like everywhere we go, we get like we were like having the private cars, like we have all of these things. So I'm like, man, it's gonna be like that. So I remember being picked up. So I don't know if you remember Abdul, like from Senegal. Abdul, like he played at Oak Hill and went to Auburn. And like his name is up there. Like if you,
I remember, I want to say Diop.
No, that's before or after Sagana. I think it's before Sagana.
Yeah, the Sagana, because you know what? I went to school with his sister. She went to school with when I was there. That's great. Yeah, it was great.
So this guy was there before like them, but like he went to Auburn, played a couple of years in Auburn, had injuries, come back and was working there. So like I remember like. So like me getting to Oak Hill was crazy. So I got to the US at like 6 a.m. from South Africa. They're like, oh, your flight's at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm like, man, these AM, PM, because I was used to the military time. My flight got canceled going to Oak Hill the same day, like that same night. I'm like, man, like how am I going to call? But luckily I have Coach Smith's number. I remember this, like I got some quarters from this guy. I put it in the phone. I called him and said, hey, coach, is Baye, your player. Like, my flight is canceled, so I won't be able to make it until tomorrow. And then the first thing he said, you speak English? I'm like, a little bit. He's like, man, this is the best, like, player I have, like, that speaks English. So I spent the night in, like, New York, and the next day I got to Charlotte. Abdul picked me up. I'm like, man, where we going? It was like 2-hour drive or hour?
Yeah, like it's crazy. You fly into Charlotte, it's another 2.5 hours.
So,
right, that's crazy.
So like I'm like, man, we're driving. He's like, man, you're gonna be surprised. And like you said, we got there. It was like, yeah. I'm like, man, this is like. Now I look at them like this is country. Like it's like you like the cows. Like it's like the turkeys, the deer. I'm like, man, this is different. It was just like no phone service. Like there was so many things that I was not.
Service.
Like I'm like, this is different. I'm like this, but it was like you said, it was like, but luckily I already have that discipline from Seeds Academy. Coming to there, I'm like, this is freedom. I'm like, this is like, even though I was in the middle of nowhere, I didn't know any better, but it was like, it was great for me. Like, just like Coach Smith, Coach Smith, you get there, he tells you exactly how it is. Let me play my game, and it was just. And like you said, for me, it was the same thing. The same mentality that I used when I played at Oak Hill was just like, you know what? Like, there's all these talented players in the team. Like, everyone that went to, like, when I was there, our top 7, 10 players of all went to D1 colleges. I'm not like not telling you like low D1, like the Kentucky, Duke, Auburn, like the top like D1 colleges. So I'm like, look, I'm just gonna whoever, I don't know who the coaches come here to visit to see. I'm gonna tell them like, I'm gonna play the best I can play, and they're gonna notice me. Like, I was just doing my thing. I didn't. It was like I was not competing with anyone. And before I knew it, I started receiving letters from all these colleges. Like, it was new to me, right? It was definitely new to me. And luckily, like from the one of the NBA person knew Coach Boeheim, and it was like, you should recruit this kid. He's really had potential. I don't know, like the conversation happened without me noticing. So I ended up like, Coach Boeheim visited, and with Coach Murph, I remember like they visited. I went to, came to campus, and it was like my foot, like, what was it, my foot senior year? Yeah, senior year, came to campus, and I'm like, man, it was nice. Like, it was nice just visiting. And I think it was your last year. It was your last year.
I remember you coming. Yeah, it was my last.
It was your last year, and that was the first week Melo was open. Like, I remember that.
Yep.
It was the first week that Melo was open. Like, you guys had like open gym. I was just I remember that.
Yep. You're right. Okay, yeah, I do remember that. So, bro, look, all that's happening, right? And you're doing it in America, but your fam's back home. How is that, right? Like, how is that transition for you, just being away, and then how is it for them?
It was hard. Like, for like, just like, I did so, like, for the first 2 years I didn't go home. Like, when I went to Oak Hill, I didn't go home. And my like a freshman year at Syracuse, I was on campus for the first semester, and I have like, and usually freshmen comes in the second semester, right? Like, but because of visa, I have to go back home, get my visa, and in order to come back and on campus. So I'm like I got to campus, like I literally graduated on a Saturday. Oak Hill, we graduated like hella late. We graduated like on a Saturday, and then like summer school was starting in Syracuse on a Monday. And I'm like, man, this is like, it was like I didn't have like no time to turn around. I ended up getting on campus on a Wednesday, and I have to go take like this test. So they wanted to make sure I was fluent in English and French, so I don't have to like do like all the extra stuff. So I was able to like take the test. I passed the French test, passed the English test, and I passed all these things. And then it's like I was right back in the summer grind. I'm like, it was completely different. I didn't have a phone that worked because it was just like I was at Oak Hill. Like, it was like no need for you to have a phone.
US Cellular.
US Cellular. Like, and I'm like, and I'm like, man, my phone doesn't even work on campus. Like, this doesn't even like help me. And I ended up going home like to visit my parents. And it was like you say, it was different for me because it was just like I got used to like not being home that much. But this was like 2 years without me seeing my parents. It's just me talking to them on the phone. And this is like before like FaceTime. So you have to like, and I was at Oak Hill, like in order to call. Like, I was telling my brother the other day, I'm like, it's so crazy how we can just now pick up WhatsApp and just call. Back, if I wanted to call my parents, I had to go out of camp. Like, I have to give money to one of the ladies from the store to go, like, when they go to Walmart, get me this card, and I have to dial this phone number, put like 7 or 8 digit, and then like all this stuff to call my parents. And I'm like, it's so crazy now. Like they're able to just like FaceTime, call people, and it was hard. Like, I think that was the toughest part of being like making the transition to the US, just not being able to see my family. But I was lucky enough like to have a host family that I was able to visit during the break. And it's like, to this day, like I call them my family. I don't even call them host family anymore because we are so tight. But it was just hard not being able to see my family back home and just like hear the voice on the phone. People have changed and all these things. The transition, it was tough. It was really tough being like just for 2 years being in the US without going to see my parents. It was definitely a change for me.
And I remember, bro, I know you remember the dorms, like how they kind of were set up on campus at Oak Hill. Like, it's so, I think we were like all the way in the back, then you had the big one to the side.
Yeah.
The girls were all the way down here. And then like you had this campus store in the middle.
Middle.
Like right when you walk up in our dorm, that's kind of like where dudes were. That's where the phone was, where dudes were sitting down right there to make that phone call.
But and you remember we have like the quiet time. Like I'm like to this day I can remember the schedule of Oak Hill. You get up at 7 o'clock, 7:30, you get to the cafe, 7:30 to 7:55, you walk to the chapel, you do the chapel until 8:05, and then you go straight to class. I'm like, I'm like, lunch is at 12 to 12:45, first lunch, second lunch, and after that you go to practice, right? And after practice is like you go shower, do whatever, and then you go to like, I'm like, I never knew that like dinner was at like 5:45 or something, right? And then you were like a kill time until like 8 o'clock, 8 to 9, quiet time or something. And from 9 to 10 is like you do the phone call, people doing laundry, and then like 11 o'clock they cut all the lights. I'm like, man, this is really like a military. It's like military school. And then you woke up the next day, do the same thing. And I'm like, it was just like I would like when I needed to call, for me it was hard because it's like everybody is like there was like a sign up sheet. Everybody was like, all right, I'm gonna call from 10 from like 9 to 9:10, and like it was hard for me, but I was able to. Abdul was there, the guy from Senegal, so I was able to go to his dorm because he was like one of the dorm guys. He was able. I was able to get there and just like if I wanted to call my parents, I have to do it between 5:30 because of the time difference, 5:36. Right. If I wait any time longer, they're all in bed, and it's just like, oh, I'm not gonna talk to them for another week. So I was able to like get a little bit of time, talk to everybody, check on everyone. But like you say, it was definitely those first 2 years in the US were the hardest. But after that, I got used to everything.
So when you were at Oak Hill, what were like the hardest schools recruiting you? The hardest schools, and why did you end up choosing Cuse?
So like I told you, like I just started receiving letters from like SMU, like Cincinnati, like all like West Virginia, like Virginia Tech, and like Syracuse. I feel like people like, why did you Syracuse was like as crazy as it sounds, was the only school I visited, right? And so like and initially like Kim Boeheim, like my former boss now, like she's like Coach Boeheim friends with like the Olympics. That's how they know each other. They said to recruit me, but I didn't know that like they talked about it or anything. So when I visited, I just felt at home, right? Like there was just something about the campus that I'm like, and I was literally after I visited, I was like I remember Nick was telling me you were hella quiet, you didn't talk or anything. But I'm like, I was just observing everything, and I'm like, talking like to coach, talking to Ryan and Brad, and like talking to just like everyone that was there. I just felt at home. Like, that's just I cannot explain it. I just felt like I'm like on my mind, I'm like, why do I have to go visit all the schools if I know that like this is where I need to be? Like when you feel that energy, like I'm all about like the vibe. Like I just feel like the energy was just right. And I'm like, all these schools recruiting me, like it's like nice, but this is the place I'm going. And then they like my coach Smith was like, you sure? I'm like, yeah. He's like, it's gonna get cold. I'm like, well, I feel I'm pretty sure that's it. And that was it. Like literally, I visited Syracuse. I'm like, I'm not going to visit anywhere else. Like I just felt home.
What? So when you made your decision for a ride to Syracuse, and you're able to tell your mom and dad back home, what was that like?
No, they couldn't believe it. They're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got another." They're like, "Another 4 years of schooling paid for?" Like the concept, like the scholarship concept is like different for like international parents. Like, so someone is paying for you to go to school for 4 years for you to just play basketball. I'm like, yeah, and then like I have to explain for them, like, and then they start seeing like seeing pictures of me and like seeing videos. It was like, oh yeah, that's definitely like it's like happening.
Man, that's awesome right there. That's awesome. So you get to Syracuse. What was your first kind of like introduction with Coach Boeheim on the court with it? You know what I mean? The whistle blow you in the first practice, and then you hear Coach do his thing. Then you like, I'm here, man. What was that like?
Like you said, it's like I was lucky enough, like it was good and bad because like my freshman class was me, Fab, Dion, and CJ.
Tough class. Tough class.
So I'm like, And I told you I was there for the first semester because I had to go home get the passport, so I didn't have time to like interact with like all of them. Luckily, with like when I was my junior year, I played AAU with CJ. Like most people don't know that I played
for real?
AAU.
So what AAU team was that? Out of Baltimore?
But yeah, Be More Elite. So like I played with Be More Elite. Like it wasn't like it was like 10 games. Like it was 10 like it was not a lot of games, but it was enough like tournaments. I played like 2 or 3 tournaments with them because my junior year at Oak Hill, I had to like, I didn't have with the Virginia rule, you have to take religion and U.S. history. And then they're like, oh, you don't have enough time in the year to do it, so you come back for summer school. So I was in summer school at Oak Hill too, not because I didn't I failed the grades, but I needed to catch up because I joined school so late. So they're like, Coach Smith was like, why don't you just play with like a team and then be more elite? Like I'm like, they're like, CJ was going to Syracuse, and they're like, why don't you just like, and they were close enough like for me to go to Baltimore because from Charlotte is a straight flight. So I played a couple times. So I get like, it's funny enough, CJ mom was like, you guys gonna be roommate in Syracuse. I'm like, we are laughing about it. And then what happened with like, and they, Dion, CJ, and Fab got there the second semester. I didn't have time to interact with them. So I got into school right when school about to start. Like it was just, I came in there, I'm like, and then that's when I meet everybody. So it was like the first practice was like, I'm like, man, this is a talented team. So I'm like, but like I was not intimidated or anything. I'm like, I went to Oak Hill. Like, it's like, isn't
you
like
already know what time it is.
Yeah, I'm like, you already know what time it is. Like it's like there's nobody like I'm like, yeah, everybody is good here, but like I'm just gonna apply the same concept that I applied when I Oak Hill because I'm like we were 40-1 my junior year at Oak Hill. We lost at the finals. I'm like, we played 40 games at Oak Hill. I'm like, it's not like it's like we don't play with good team. We play all the top school,
top notch.
So I'm like, I remember playing DeMarcus Cousins on Hawaii in a Hawaii tournament. I'm like, man, we play the top team. So I'm like, what I'm just gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna take it one practice at a time, and then whenever game come, I'm taking one game at a time. And I'm like we got there, and then Boeheim, everybody know who he is because the Olympic at that time is like the U.S. Olympic start thing happening, and like you start like meeting the coaches. And my first year was with Bernie, like he was a big man coach,
Big Burn.
So I got to learn a lot from him. My second year was with Hop, and I'm telling you, like it was like Hop took me from just like the regular player, like physically and mentally I was ready, but he took me to the next level. Like he is just like was just telling me like give me the extra things. Like after practice, we used to stay around, like just because my freshman year, most people don't know, I played half of the season with the messed up wrist, so I had to get surgery right at the end of the season. And then Hop was like, after he took over, I started learning a lot. I started watching videos, and he started telling me, like I started learning a lot about the zone. I'm like I started being a student, start learning about like the middle of the zone. What can I do to help the team win? I'm like, you know what? We have a lot of guys to score. Like, I'm like, it's not going to be a problem us getting like scoring. The problem is like, how can we stop the other team? And that's just when I started, like, just decided to like, I'm going to own this middle of the zone. And then that's when everything started.
So, okay. So when Hop takes over, he kind of gave you that mentality, gave you that mindset. Like,
oh yeah. Like I remember like, Coach would be like, sometimes just like, after I understood everything in practice, like he used to just say, man, this, you good? Hop was like, yo, get yourself on the treadmill. The Ryan run, the run that Ryan had in there. He's like
8.5, 8.5.
Yeah. So I was doing that, my sophomore year. And then like my junior year was like, because like coach at that point, like I'm, when he put me there, like, if I play 30 seconds, he knows I will give him the best 30 seconds ever. And then like, I was lucky enough my freshman year, like things happened, and he's like, man, like I started a couple of games, and he's like, I feel like you better coming off the bench because you bring a different type of energy when you come off the bench to the starters. So I'm like, man, whatever you need from me, I will do it. I'm like, I'm just here, like, I'm here as a soldier. Whatever you need me to do, if I come from the bench, if I play 30 seconds, he's gonna be the best 30 seconds ever. And I can start seeing my playing time start increasing. I'm like, even though I'm not like scoring, because I know the scoring, like we had Dion, like Scoop, all these guys that can score, Brandon Trish. I'm like, why do I like scoring is important, but like, is that really like me getting, if I get 15 points a game and we lose the game, at the end of the day, we're going to end up losing. But if I get 3 points a game, we end up winning. At the end of the day, nobody care. Like, we still winning, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, we were like 20-0. Like, I'm like, people don't like, I'm like, now I'm looking at the college basketball. I'm like, what we did when I was there was like unbelievable. We were like number one in the country for 6 or 7, 8 weeks. I'm like, now nobody's staying with number one for like a week. Like, I'm like, it's just,
that's tough to do, bro.
It's tough to do. And I'm like, it's just like the team, like this probably one of the best, like my 4 years there, I think every team has like, we had bonds that was like created that like was like unbelievable. Like we always had like, I'm like, every team you play for, there's some pieces and we all bonded together. I think us just like knowing each other's like strength and weakness, hanging out, not just, I think like you said, is one of those things like people don't know. I'm like, us hanging out after practice and stuff, that's what builds the team. Like practice is 2 hours a day, right? What can you do in 2 hours? Yeah, like everybody, all of us are hoopers, right? After that, what happened after practice is what's important. That's what built the team to make it a solid, like one unique like team. I think, and my junior year was definitely like my favorite year when we got to the Final Four, and that was the same mentality. Hop was like, man, coach is gonna do the same thing. Like he's gonna let you, practice a little bit. Games come, the big games, you're gonna play 25, 30 minutes. So get your body ready. And shout out to Ryan. Kabilas got me.
Shout out to Ryan Kabili.
Got me my body ready, and Hob mentally got me ready. And I remember the game against Georgetown, like it was just like one of those games. Hop was like, this might be your night, big guy. I'm like, and there was a last biggest tournament too. It was so many emotion happening. And then I think that was one of my favorite games, the biggest game against Georgetown when we beat them in overtime. And like Hop was like, and that was the one day I'm looking at Hop. I'm like, this guy is a genius, because like if I was not getting those like extra 10 minutes in the treadmill walking out with Ryan, I will never be able to finish this game. And like, Hop is definitely a shout out to him.
Shout out to Hop, the ultimate motivator, bro.
Yeah, I was able, actually, funny enough, with my job with the NBA, I was with the NBA Academy in Utah, and I'm sitting there with Alma. Alma was there, and then I see someone. She's like, "Is that Hop?" I met him in Utah. Yeah, out of all these places, he showed up in Utah because he wanted to watch some of our NBA Academy players play. So we got the chance to catch up for like 2 or 3, 2 days. And then he's just like, he just left and went back to you. He's like, come visit anytime you want. I'm like, man, I got a job now, man. I can't just pack up and just leave. But like I said, he's the ultimate guy. Like he got me like mentally and physically ready, because it was hard some days, like I was so confused because, coach would like against Lamonia, like Colgate or something. It's like, get my 10 minutes a game. I'm good, because he's like, all right, we don't really need you there. But like we play like a Duke or something, he would be like, all right, just let me, like, because he knew like I was able to like have the endurance and I had the physical like capacity to do it.
And in that middle, like everyone knows the most important position in the zone is the center position. And you got to communicate, and you were the best at it.
So like one of the things I did, I'm like, I just took like something that I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm like, if the guards need to trust you, like I'm feel like is like the wings, you're already there with them. They can see everything, but the guards have to trust you, because if the guards don't trust you in the zone, it's gonna break down. And I was able to, like, when the screen is coming, they know the screen is coming like 30 seconds before, because I know the big is not like like I said, we start talking to each other, and I would just vocal. I was just like making sure that I'm like, sometimes I wasn't even saying anything, but that just to make with the offense.
But it make it,
like Hab used to tell us like just say a bunch of gibberish stuff. So it was like, and I started learning from like, I'm like, I was not the heaviest guy there, but I knew I can use my physicality, 3 quarters, like the little things. I'm like, it was, I would call it out. I'm like, it's like you gotta, I was cheating maybe to the test because I knew exactly what to do in order
But you weren't afraid to mix it up though.
to mix
Bye.
it up.
Like you weren't afraid to mix it up either. Like you're not talking trash or not talking shit or nothing, but you're not backing down at all though.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, it's just like being able to just like play like, I'm like, it's like a David and Goliath. Like when we were playing against the Marquette, they had two big guys, 7-1 Atule, and then Gardner, which is like, you're gonna get ducked in all day. But if you like, I was ahead of I knew they were gonna do the high low, but I was always able to use my quickness to front and then move around. And like I was able to trust also the wings because I know if I go on the high post, the guy drop, we were able to like communicate enough to know that like we had so many like steals, and I'm like, everybody was like, what was the secret? I'm like, everything you think that was open was not open. So everyone was like, what do you mean? I said, if you think something is open, you pass the ball, we're gonna get there. But something that's not open, you put the ball there, because usually what's gonna be open because we're thinking about the next move. And people were like, and then sometimes now watching the games is like, I'm like, man, I wish I had another year. This is like, this is a walk in the park. And like you said, as you get older, you get to learn a lot about the game because like I watch a lot. Like my first job with the NBA was evaluating the referees, so I got to watch NBA game a day, one NBA game a day. So it took me 6 or 7 hours to watch one game. So I was like, I learned so much from the game. I'm like, man, I'm sure I want to be retired now because like I like after playing in Europe, now working with the league, I'm like, I learned a lot about the game, like how like the game have slowed so much. The game have slowed down, and I'm learning like the important things about the game.
What was the best zone team that you played on in your 4 years?
Man, that Final Four zone, that team was.
So, but that wasn't like, but by you, that team I think was 30-11. 11-7 in the I think was it the Big East, or it was the Big East? Yeah. But you were on teams that were like only lost 3 games.
3 games, like my
sophomore year team. Right.
My sophomore year team was really, the one we won the Big East regular season.
Yeah, first place.
That game, that zone, we were just like dominant. We were just like, it's not like bullying people. We were just like showing people. And I remember this. We started the season, and just like the usual thing, they didn't expect nothing from us. We were not ranked at all. We went from number 24. Like this just kept climbing and we're number 1 in the country, I think, for like a month and a half, if I remember. And it's massive. But like, I think the reason why I love the Final Four team, we were just like a bunch of guys that were just like, we were just having fun outside of the of just like Mellow Center. We were like all leaves like we literally had, I think we were living in wine, like whatever place on South Campus. We had 3 or 4 like 3 or 4 built like that one building has like, that was me and CJ. I think it was Mike and Rakim, and then like Benajay and Tresh, and I think, I don't know who, we were like close enough, like, so we just used to like just kick it, like play Call of Duty, like all this, like so we were just able to kick it and just hang out and have that bond. Like we like sometimes we like just like, what can we do to make the zone better? Like we just used to talk about like what can,
that's big time, bro.
That's big time. Like one me like we used to like a hangout, but we also used to talk about talk basketball, right? Like we used to watch the other games happen. We were like, man, we will, if we play this team, we will like destroy this team, because we were so confident about ourselves, just not as a players, but whatever team we play. Yeah, we respected you, but we also give you the work. Like it was just like, I think while it was my sophomore and junior year was definitely one of my two of my favorite teams.
So what was the difference though between, so why didn't the 34-2 team go to the Final Four, but the 30-10 team did? What was the difference between the?
It's just like we got burned out a little bit.
Okay.
Like I was, if that was the, I would say maybe people will have different opinions, but I remember the team that got to the Final Four. I remember like we lost to Georgetown, like pretty bad. Remember that we lost my junior year. Man, I'm like, it felt bad. And then I remember we got to New York for the Big East tournament, and then James, like always, like he's like, yo, we gotta have a meeting or something. And that was we all like, I remember we all sat in the in I don't know whose room, and then we're like, look, man, we know what we can do, right? Everybody was like, yeah, we're like, look, we're not here to prove anyone right or wrong. We're just gonna play one game at a time. And then that's what we but that's what we did at that game, like that biggest tournament. And we're like, look, we know we're gonna make it to the tournament because our record shows it, but we're gonna play one game at a time and then we played it one game at a time. We didn't think like, oh, we're gonna be this game and then we're gonna go to the quarterfinals. We just say one game at a time. And then it was like seeing it happen, like when we got our groove back, it was just like, I think that was it. Like, I think the sophomore year team was like a better team, but I think it was just like, we kind of just like, we're just gonna like fight to the hump. And it was just like, by the time we got into it was too late. And then the junior year team, even though we were fighting to the hump, we came up together. We were like, all right, this is it. Let's do it. And then I think that was the difference.
What was there a moment? And I know it was. Don't lie to me either on this. When you thought to yourself in any point in your career, practice, game, whatever it was, you was like, damn, coach, this dude crazy. Was there a moment where he made you think like that?
Man, I remember this. So like it was my sophomore, like my junior year, maybe. Yeah. So like Rakim and I were like after practice, we used to stay and hop, used to just make a shoot and do all that. He walked by and was like, why they are taking it? They might not be taking it in the game. I'm like, man, I'm like, this dude is crazy, man. I'm like, man, even though if we don't take it in the game, what happened if we like end up like a scenario happened 5 seconds less in the shot clock, we take a jump shot and make it, you're not gonna be mad at us. But like, I'm like, man, I'm like, he's different. But like you say, he's like, if you, me and him had an understanding that like he was able, like sometimes like he was able to unload everything on me and I was able to take it because I had like a tougher skin. Like then like he used to yell and I look like, and I learned that from like early when he's like start talking at you and you put your eyes down, man, he's gonna come hard. But if you talk, you look at him straight in the eye and just like whenever he used to do that, I say, look at him and say, coach, I got you. And then like I can see like he diffused, like he just calms down a little. Yep. And then like just, but like when he start talking to whoever, you put your head down. Oh, he's like, oh, like he's a lion. He knows what to do. As soon as you put your eye contact down, he's like, oh, I got him. Like with me, like all my 4 years, I was never scared to stare at him straight in the eye and just tell him like, coach, I got you. And then he knew when I said it, I meant it. Like he was not worried that like, he knew that I was always going to like whenever he needed from me, I was going to be able to provide it.
Yeah, he like if he wasn't gonna yell at guys that he knew couldn't take it, right? I mean,
he like, I feel like sometimes I'm like I'm in the bench. I don't know why I'm getting yelled at, but I'm like, I know if you yell at, for example, whoever, I know if you like, I'm like, I know if you yell at CJ, like we might lose the game, but if he yells at me, I'm like, okay, like let's do it, like I think I don't remember. Was it the biggest game? Yeah, it was one of those biggest games. And then of course we're about like 10 or 15, like 3 minutes left, and one of the forwards didn't rotate, and then he came at me. You fucking! I'm like, yo, I'm like, yeah, I cannot contest the 3-point shot on the corner, turn around and run and grab the rebound. Like some of
that. They do that now, Baye. That center go all the way out to the corner now.
No, and that's what Hop said. Hop was like, you were literally the first one that started like contesting like a 3-point shots, and he's like, just like you kind of changed our mindset. And then it's like just so funny. All his assistant coaches were like, dude, our players don't know who you are, but we all know who you are because he still watched videos showing them like what I was able to, the distance I was able to cover and all that. I'm like, I was telling him when I saw him in Utah, I'm like, man, like I'm like, I didn't know like how important like what you taught me was, but I'm so grateful that you were there like throughout my time because I learned so much from that guy. But definitely, like you said, I was able to, because I was always a step ahead. It was like playing chess when I was in the zone. I'm like, I know if they move, like, I was like not a nerd, but I was a good to read the scouting report. I know who's on the corner. So by the time the ball moved, I was already running to the corner and I was able to get there every single time. And that's how we could create all those turnovers and traps.
100%. No defensive awareness, communication. If you could have that in the zone, on top of what your teams had, all athletes, like crazy athletes.
Chris,
So you could.
I'm like our Final Four team was literally like, so Rakim and I were in the back. We had Jeremy, CJ, and Jeremy, CJ, and James. Up front, we have Trish and MCW.
Oh man, I mean,
So
come
so
on, bro.
so I'm like if you look at, like, I felt so bad when, when you play beating a team so bad, you're like, man, like, should we feel bad? But didn't get, when we play Indiana and Yogi could not see over the zone. I'm like he literally he threw the ball and Mike was just like tapping the ball right and left. And I remember, I will never forget this. Hop was like, and you know how Hop psychologically he's on your head. He's like, man, you're gonna play Indiana. Like, this kid Coach Zeller gonna come give you buckets, and you know how Hop talking so much trash. And then he got 6 points. I walk in the locker room. I let him have it. And Boeheim was like, no.
That was his whole. He wanted to make you do that though.
No,
That was
he wanted to make do that, and he's like, "You're never gonna take a charge on him." And like, first play of the game, I took a charge, and then you can. I'm like, this guy. Like, I'm like, this guy is literally in my head. I'm like, but like in all good, like not badly, but good. Like he's like
right,
literally
exactly.
like a playing like with your, like, see how like he kind of take out something out of you that you didn't know you had, right? Like every single time.
Yeah, that's you just described it perfectly. That's what Hop does, 100%. What do you think, bro, is one thing that you took from SU that you learned? It could have been campus, court, whatever it is, that you still keep with you today.
I'd like perseverance. Like, I just like, so it doesn't matter what happened. Just like with me now is just like working with the NBA is like, it's one of the great, like, it's a great company, but like, there's always downtime, right? Because it's like with my job is like, it was traveling, going to all this part of the country, like world, like teaching kids from age. My age group is 4 to 14. That's like just trying to develop the next fan of the like fans of NBA. And it's just like, sometimes you're not going to be able, you're going to go to a country, the basketball court is not set up. You're going to have to make sure that like you have 8 hours to make sure that, oh, if I leave here tomorrow morning, when I come back, if there's no basketball court, there will be no camp. Like, just being able to persevere in like tough situation. I definitely learned that from Q's, and just like a giving back. Like, just like for me, I think it was like definitely seeing Coach like and Julie and like everybody in the community, like the Syracuse community, they love giving back. And that's always something that stuck with me. It's like, just like, Syracuse is a small town, right? But it's like, they are so big with generosity, right? They always give back. That's why I always love going back home and being able to run my camp and to like just impact kids, because like I feel like growing up, it's like I had that one opportunity, and then like I would just want to expose these kids this opportunity that they might be able to have. So I just love going back home now and just running camps and just influencing the young generation.
Yeah, so let's stay right there. Let's talk about that transition. So you go to Denmark, you play overseas for a little bit, right? And then you come back and you start this job with the NBA. How was that for you, bro? Like, you've been playing basketball your whole life, right? And then you stop playing basketball, and then you kind of you still would play, you still sticking with ball, but you're in the business side of things. So
Yeah.
how was that transition?
Yeah, so my first year was like, I took my first year because I had problem with my shoulder. So I'm like, man, like I want to go back, but like I'm not like 100%. When you have that feeling, like
Yeah.
you did that. I'm like, man, this is not like, I don't feel like, I feel like I'm ready to play, but I'm tired of like the Europe bullshit. Like, like getting paid on time, practice.
Yeah.
You don't have you gotta get to practice. Like the handball team is practicing before you, because like they like all those extra stuff that like, like it's basketballs on some of these places is like, yeah, they
It's
love
crazy.
when you win, but like they don't care that much. So I'm like,
Yeah.
and then my first year I just took like just took the year off. I'm just gonna reevaluate like what I want to do. And I had surgery because the torn labrum and bicep was definitely like something that I was not able to keep playing on, because it's just like, it was just popping randomly. And then I was like, funny enough, like my job initially was, I shared my resume with the Northern Jersey Syracuse alumni group. They shared with this guy Micah. He's like works with the NBA, but he does like content and stuff. And then they shared with that HR, and then they're like, "Oh, do you want to do this like games analogy and strategy?" I'm like, man, I don't know what this is about. They're like, oh, you watch the game, evaluate the refs, and see see the calls they made, if that's accurate, and like everything they like do. So I'm like, hi, I'm like, why not? So I went, I interviewed for that job. Initially was like, man, I'm telling you, that was the toughest thing I've ever done. It was like you sit for literally from 7 or 6:30 in the morning to like 5 o'clock just watching one game. Like you will literally watch one play 3 or 4 times just to like depict everything. I'm like, man, I don't think this is for me, man. I'm like, I love the job. Like it was great people, like great department. Like I got to learn a lot from about the game because I was like, the game have slowed down, but I'm like, I cannot do this. And then luckily, like Coach Boeheim's friends department had it needed like someone for the grassroots side, which is like, junior NBA, which is like the youth, like focusing on grassroots. And we're international. So I work with the international side. And then I applied for that job and I've been there for 3 years. So it's like this is more like up my pace. So it's like, yeah, you do a lot like the deal memo and do all that, but you travel a lot around the world teaching kids like the right way to play the game. Like, for example, is like I talked to our office in Asia Pacific, which is like teaching kids in Indonesia how to dribble a basketball. So it's kind of, so I'll say like is so like I'm here in New York, but I'm like in the day of work I go all around the world because I'm talking to like all our 8 regions, just trying to figure out how we can impact the next generation of ball players. And like that's the thing, like for me that was like I'm not playing, but this is what I'm doing, just like you, man. Like you don't have to play the game in order to make an impact, right? Like the game have done so much for us, but I exactly knew it was time for me to stop. And then this what I'm doing now, I'm like is compared to my first job, like I said, I loved it, but it was just sitting down and just watching the game. But now, like before the pandemic, the summer, like it was so good for me that I was going to the Caribbean, like teaching kids in Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, Antigua, how to play the game the right way. Now running the camp, we are going like to Alaska, teaching kids in the Native American side of things, how to do things. So it's just like so great to be giving back, and it's just from Q's. Like it's just been learning to give back to the community you are like around it. Now have a bigger community to give back to, but at the same thing, I'm happy for like what I am now.
So what's that feeling like though, bro? Kind of being able to do what somebody did for you growing up, gave you that exposure to be able to get over to the United States, and now you're able to kind of create that opportunity for others.
So like 2 years ago, I did like that, like before the year right before the pandemic, I did that GoFundMe. I built like refurbished the court. So I went back home and I'm like, so they only had like 3 like a rim up, like they had 3 basketball like rims, and they had to figure out what to do. I'm like, man, there's like, and my brother sent me pictures. I'm like, this is last minute. I'm like, man, like they can have 7 court, like 7 basketball, like the hoops up. Like, I'm like, how can I help? And like, man, I'm telling you, like, man, you can see the pot, like those aren't even like a regular holes. It was like potholes in the court, man. It was like, I don't know how these kids, I'm like, I don't know if I've been to the US too long. I'm like, none of these kids can twist their ankle, but there's holes in this court. Like, how can we fix it? But like I said, being able to like raise the money, go back home, refurbish that court, and just like I was just standing back, and it was just like I was full of emotion. Like I couldn't even like, I didn't cry or anything, but I'm like I was so happy that I was able to, like, these kids, like nobody never done a camp for them. Like, how like you go to camp, you get a t-shirt, and then you're like, oh man, thank, like these kids. So like I give a couple people t-shirts, like kids, they wash the shirt, like iron it, and they did everything, bring it back in the afternoon, because they thought that like, oh, they had to return it. I'm like, no, it's for you. I'm like, it's for you guys. And then they like, their eyes like open up. They're like someone actually kind of like care enough to come back to give us back like something. And last year I did the same thing. I worked for the Basketball Africa League. We just started it in Africa, and it was like I came back home. I brought headbands, tights, sleeves, and all these extra things. And like I will send you some pictures, but like, man, if you see these people, like these kids' reaction is just like it's like people's face can say 1,000 words. Like you can see the same thing. Like the things I see everything you've been doing on the Syracuse community is the same thing, man. People like that joy, like them being happy is more than anything for me. Like just seeing them excited, like we actually like this is something that like we receive from someone that cared enough to come back and like being able to give us something that's our own is just so like great.
And it's really something that kids over here, bro, take for granted, right?
Oh
Oh, like
man, like
you give you a shirt, they throwing that thing away or something.
no,
You know what I mean?
but like it was so hard for me, like because we have used to have like we have this tournament in Orlando, and we have like leftover stuff. Like we have like I, I say we waste so much money in the NBA ordering stuff, and we have so much stuff, and we give it like the international kids because we have like kids from like China, we have kids from Africa, like we have kids from Canada, and I'm like Mexico, and I'm like, yo, you can take whatever you want. The kids from and I will grab like one or two extra shirts. I'm like, yo, you can grab whatever you want. We tried to give it to the US kids. We're like, man, I'm cool, man. I want that shit. I'm like, I'm like, yo, I'm like, we're sitting there. We sitting like me and my colleague that works in the like, he's like, man, he's like, look at the. I'm like, this is like this. And it's not like they're just so much of it, right? Like it's like so much of like it's a good and a bad thing, right? We have, and I'm like if a kid's want shoes in the US, it's like you can go to Marshalls and you can buy your shoes, right? Like back home, when I needed the shoes, like I used to like I told these kids, I'm like, man, this is just how bad you want it. Like the first 2 years when I started playing, I was renting running shoes to play basketball. I was putting cardboard, like I'm like, you guys, I'm like, it's just how bad I want it. I'm like, you guys don't really want, like, I'm like, I want it bad enough. I was literally in the morning, I used to get cardboard, cut it down, and measure my insole, cut them all like the same size, and put it in the bottom of my shoes. And then that's what I was using to play basketball. And I was like, I used to change the bottom of it every 3 days. Like the guy used to like come super glue it and make like cover it a little bit with a little bit of leather. I'm like, that's how bad I want it. I'm like, I had one pair of shoes for 2 years. Here, like, I'm like it's a habit now for me. I'm like, I'm buying shoes because like I didn't have them growing up. Like it's like that one thing. I'm like, I have enough pair of shoes, but like it's like that sense. Like it's still one thing that still follow me. I'm like, and then when I go back home, I bring all like shoes, polos, and all these things. I just give it away. Like I like I one last time I went home, I brought 7 bags. I came home with just a carry-on because I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, we have like it's not gonna hurt me to give someone a polo because like for the coaches, they never receive a polo for a camp. That never happened to those coaches. They've been coaching for over 25 years. Nobody ever give them a polo and say, hey girl, man, this is for you. Like they never like they're not expecting that. So it's definitely like you said, it's definitely like seeing you like doing your thing as it definitely like motivates me to give back more to just like where I'm from.
Oh man, that puts shit in perspective, doesn't it? Like, I mean, god damn. I mean, on one hand, you like, god damn, we selfish as hell over here. Like, we got a lot of issues, and then on the other hand, you just like, man, I'm glad I'm able to do this for these kids. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's big time work right there. That's really what it's about, right? That's the top of the line.
Like it's just like I say, it's just like you like, for example, like how many times did you give someone like a coat like for the winter and then like the expression on their face, like that's not something money can buy, right? It's like like it's just like they feel like they are appreciated by someone, and it's just like for me it's like I'm going back home hopefully in March or somewhere for the second phase of the BA Basketball Africa League. I'm trying to do the same thing. My coach was like, the coach that was like taught me how to play was like, man, you set a high standard because every time they see you around, they know there's something. It's Christmas in June. I'm like, man, I'm like, I have set up, like I said, I have set the precedent. So now every time they see me, they kind of know that like, oh, he's gonna do something nice for us. And it's just like when I go back, it's not like I don't do nothing crazy. I just like clean the court, like because it's just like it's kind of hard to maintain it, right? Like us, we have an indoor thing you close and you get access to whenever. Back home, you exposed to the element. If it's super hot, you're gonna practice. Like you're gonna have to see like, all right, I'm gonna wait until the sundown to practice. If it's raining, you're not gonna practice, and you could like there's so much sand, you can't even like like when I was home last time, I'm like, they're like, oh, you want to play 5-on-5? I'm like, man, I was so scared to play because it was like we end up like I end up buying like brushes, shovels, like all this cleaning stuff. So that every week now, like on Sundays, they clean the whole thing just to make sure they maintain the ground. Like we already fixed it, so why like it's we finally like got a way to make them. They used to be water puddles in the court because it was not like level. So now it's level. Everything is like perfect. So but just like try to maintain it. It's kind of hard also to teach the people in that like back home how to maintain things because that's what I do for work. So I can be able to easily like bring my expertise and say, all right, this is what you need to do if you want to keep this thing for a long time.
Man, bro, that's so dope, bro. I'll tell you what, that's super dope right there. All right, bro, we got these are the last few questions for you. All right, we going back to Cuse for a second. Your favorite place to eat in Cuse all time?
Man, I love dinosaur barbecue, man. Like there's like every time I come to Cuse in the summer, I have like we have to have like a dinosaur barbecue set out.
Mom's Diner too, or what? I know,
man, mom's that man.
Not around anymore.
What you thought?
It's not around, bro.
Man, I spent like so many so many winter break at Mom's Diner, man. Like man, you're right. Mom's Diner, like I'm talking about like the Mom's Diner was the spot.
Yeah, Mom's Diner was the spot. What's your top 5 ever at Cuse? Your all-time top 5
players? Oh,
yeah.
Man, we gotta go with Melo because the Oak Hill.
No doubt. You got to go with Melo regardless.
Regardless, but like I'm like it's DC definitely because of OG DC. I have to have Jerry in there. G-Mac.
That's tough. Yeah.
This is not in any order. Man. John.
Ooh, yeah, this is your 5, and that's tough so far.
Man.
Damn, that's a tough, boy.
So I need one more. I'll put you out of shooting guard, man.
You're gonna make some people upset, boy.
I'm not gonna make some people upset. I told Alma, I say he has the best. His left hand is better than his right hand. And I'm just like, it's just that Oak Hill fam. I'm like, I gotta put my Oak Hill guys in there, right? I gotta put my two Oak Hill people in there. I gotta keep the I feel like we haven't had an Oak Hill player since me, right? Or did we?
Damn, who was? Nah, bro, you're right.
Yeah, it's like that's it, man. We need to.
We used to have a lot of since Melo, Billy Edlin, Deshaun Wright, myself, you. Damn, we had a lot from Oak Hill for real.
And now that's it, man. That's it. So that's it's not in any order. I'm not trying to hurt nobody's feeling, but that's
yours. That's your. Hey, with that squad, we gonna get some buckets and we gonna get some wins. You know that. That's a fact. Last question, bro. What are your thoughts on this year's team, and what do you think they needed to do to make an NCAA tourney run or get in and make an NCAA tourney run?
I definitely love this year team. I think it's just like the they don't have. We need a finisher, which is that's what is. It's like I'm watching the games. We're about 10-15. I'm like, oh man, this is over. Next thing you know, I'm like, we're down 10. How? Yeah. So it's just and then I think it's definitely a Jesse is definitely coming along. I really like the way he plays. I think he's just being consistent. I feel like they play to the level of whatever the competition is. You can see that, for example, when they play, I'm excited to see when they play Duke because they're gonna play to that level of that team. But my thing is why can you not play like that all year round? If you play like that, you can beat any team you want because it's just they don't. I think they don't trust. Sometimes it's that thing, the trust of each other kind of right. Because we I knew when I played, I can trust the 4 guys that I'm always in on the 5 that was there. That's I can trust them with my life. And then everybody all the teams gonna scout. They talk. They're like, all right, Buddy is the last option. So I think it's just just having that sense of just trusting each other and just the bigs, I think definitely they are huge. Like it's just like they are a huge part of the any game they play, because I feel like we're getting killed in the middle. I'm like, man, it's like I'm sitting there like I'm on my head watching the games with me because I'm sitting yelling at the TV because I'm like, it's just I will took it so easily. I'm like, just take one step up, take one step.
Yeah,
She's like,
yeah, yeah.
how do you know? I'm like, it's just I'm like, she's
Oh,
like, really?
you know.
I'm like, it was just a second nature because
Yeah,
you take one step up. I'm like, I was defending two people at some one point, but people were so scared to throw the ball, even though I'm like, I'm not gonna get to one of them, but fake it until you make it. But it's just, I love the team, but it's just like, they just need to trust each other and just play up to the past the level of the competition. Don't play with the competition level. Like I think that's the thing that happened. Like you play with the like, oh, like exchange a bucket back and forth, and then that game come to the end, and then we don't have a closer, someone that can like actually like, Buddy can do it, but like now everybody was like, all right, we're just gonna focus on Buddy, let him beat us. We need like a Joe is there, but like some like then again, like people know that like they can take away who they can. Like Florida State did that pretty well at the game that I watched last. I think they realized, oh, let's take Buddy out of the game, and then Joe was having a good game. Let's just take those two guys away. Let the other guy beat us.
Yeah, that's right. No, they got to string together some victories. Like you talked about Duke. We got Duke this Saturday at Duke, 12 o'clock noon.
Yeah.
We got to go in there and steal one, man.
I'm like, it's that's not a hard place to win. Like, it's like if you literally comes in and punch them in the mouth, you gotta the game the coach got ejected. That game, we literally come in and just smack them. And like I'm like, yo, we're gonna just show them that like this is not like we just came in and just straight step like this, like we got this. But you gotta be able to play, like you said. That's the thing I liked about you. Like doesn't matter where we play, where we at, we're gonna show you like we cues, right? Like, but that's the thing that like we don't have that, like we kind of missing that swag. Like we used to like we
that
all
dog.
had
We need that dog. We need that
like,
dog. Bye.
Like I'm like, I love Jesse, but like I'm like, boy, like I'm like, he's too nice. I say, if I'm gonna wait, like I say, when I played, if I waste a foul, you're gonna feel it. Like, no, but like I'm like, you foul the guy, yeah, he got on the line. But when I used to foul someone, I'm like, yeah, I was a skinny guy. But when I used to foul someone, you're not gonna come in there like you're about to dunk on me or you got about to lay. You're gonna do something else to score. But like I'm like, it's just,
we're gonna clip that too. We're gonna clip that, and then I'm gonna make sure Jesse sees that, because from one of the all-time, great centers in the middle of that zone, he need to hear that, bro.
Like, and then like I used like when I go, I kind of talk to them and stuff, but I feel like it's like they think I'm not like, not that I'm not, bro. Burama was doing it last year. Like when I talked to him, he finally realized, oh shit, that's not hard, and then he started doing it. But like with him is with his injuries, and Jesse, I talked to him last time I went to Q's, but it's like it's kind of hard to like just like them not knowing exactly, like it's just like a situational basketball, like I call it. You gotta just know what, like where you are, because
that feel.
Yeah, like with that feel, because I'm like every position I played at Syracuse was like it was different, because every team came in. I'm like when we played Duke, I know the Zeller brother was not like the Plumlee brother was not gonna shoot it, so I'm not gonna go up there in the 3-point in the free throw line, and I was dropping back to the baseline because I know they were gonna try to dump it down for a dunk. Just read read the offense, but like it's kind of hard, right? It's hard for me because I already been through it. I know exactly like how to the changes that need to be made, but it's definitely like a work in progress. I think they definitely have to put some wins together if we want to get to the tournament. And when we get to the tournament, we're a different beast. Like it's like nobody can handle us in the tournament, but it's just getting there. It's like it's gonna be the problem.
That's a fact. Hey, bye, man. I really appreciate you taking the time out and everything that you're doing, bro. Super dope, super inspiring. Like I love when you hear stories about people going and giving back, especially to the kids, man, who don't have those type of opportunities, and you exposing these kids to different opportunities that can really change their life, bro. Like you really change your lives, man. And so I appreciate you coming on and just sharing everything that you're doing, man. Definitely. And bro, I mean this when I say this, man. One of the best human beings I've ever met, bro. Like that's 100% fact, man.
I appreciate it. I definitely likewise, man. You definitely have, make an impact on all of us. Like I know you don't hear, like we don't talk to each other that much, but definitely seeing what you're doing definitely like inspired me to give back.
My man, no, we always family, you know that, bro.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you, man.
No problem.